Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Somewhere between science and superstition.
We have such sights to show you.
Strange Aeons. Welcome to Strange Aeons Radio. That's Eric Morgret over there.
Hello.
That's Vanessa Williams over there.
Hello.
I'm Kelly Young. Today we're talking Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Where'd you guys go?
I'm over here.
The humor's running deep this morning. This time.
Invisibility film, you asshole. And but before we get to that, as always, I wanted to ask you guys what you guys been watching and doing the last week or so.
I got a couple interesting ones. I mean, I'll do one of them, of course. Let's see. Should I start with the one I liked or the one I didn't like?
Oh, intrigue. Let's start with the one you didn't like.
Yeah,
we'll start
the bad
with
news first.
Yeah.
Rapid. The remake of Rabid
Oh, really? I've been wondering.
showed up on that library app that I use, Hoopla.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it was free. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll watch it. What the hell?
Wow.
This is done by the Soska sisters,
Yes.
right?
Oh.
Yep. I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember if I've seen Cronenberg's Rabid.
Okay.
I've seen a few of his early films, but that was a long time ago, and I.
Did you watch?
Don't remember that.
Do you watch any of the Joe Bob specials? Because it was in one of them.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it is good.
Oh, it's a good one. Okay. Well, this is not so good.
Do you like any of the Seska sisters?
I really
work?
liked American Mary.
I did too.
Yeah, I thought that was they're one of their few truly original films, and I thought it was their best.
And then they did like a sequel to something, some kind of slasher.
Yeah,
Fear No
wrestling
Evil
guy.
or See No Evil or
that's
something
it.
like that. And I thought that was fine for what it was.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of people that like this film. There's a lot that's fine in it, but it's I just the little things just kept pulling me out of it. Like some of the effects work, which I read was a strong point, and I disagree.
Oh.
Like they did. She, if you don't know the story of Rabid, she gets in a car wreck and her face is horribly disfigured. She works in the fashion industry. The lead's not a model, but she works in the fashion industry. The disfigurement was her face being largely pulled off, but the way they did the teeth, it looked so ridiculously unnatural.
He was on the outside of her face.
Yeah, it's like, I know that's a really hard prosthetic to do real, but let's do a real one and maybe augment it a little bit with some computer effects or something to maybe make it look.
If your main effect isn't going to look right, then you need to figure out a way to not have that your main effect, right?
Yeah. Yep. But then she goes and goes to the magical healing place and has it fixed by a super skin graft that makes her quote unquote better looking. So now she becomes the guy in the fashion thing likes her now and wants her to show her stuff there. I don't know.
It sounds very odd.
Yeah. It's basically it's called Rabid because it's kind of like rabies is spread. Mm-hmm. The violence is occasionally done well, but it's also occasionally done strange. The hard part of doing a low budget fashion movie comes out very strongly in the fashion show.
Right.
Where it's very obvious that, wow, these are crappy risers with crappy folding chairs in a room that's much too small for this kind of an event. And it's like, if you're going to do, there's a way to do that and make it look cool. Like I've seen things online where somebody did a fashion show in basically it would look like a linoleum room, but they laid it out where the runway was the floor. Yeah. And then they had neat risers on the side and it looked cool. It's like, well, do something like that.
Or you could just like rent out a space that already exists because that's not crazy expensive.
I would
or
think
borrow a
because it wasn't
space,
a no budget movie or anything like that.
Yeah.
They obviously had some money to spend.
Yeah.
The acting's good. The performances are overall pretty good, except for the fashion designer guy who's kind of over the top and not in a good fashion over the top way. Like I love the little forgot her name in the Invincibles. Who designs other costumes?
Oh yeah.
Who's very much an over the top version of that kind of character.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really work. Okay. It's just kind of.
I'm sad to hear that, but also not surprised because the original is, I mean, it's very Cronenberg. It's very body horror, and it's really hard to replicate his style because even though, I mean, he's not super high budget either, but he does a lot with what he's got.
Yeah. And body horror to me is something a little more specific than just rabid people attacking each other and biting and tearing flesh off.
Yeah.
Horror, as the lady goes through as body horror, is a very small portion of the movie because she doesn't.
Wow.
She gets fixed fairly quickly and looks normal for a large portion of the film, and doesn't have to deal with that trouble like she should have to in a quote unquote body horror film.
I'm not sure anybody was really waiting for this to be remade.
Right. Yes.
So I'm not sure why they chose this one to go after.
Although I will say, like, speaking of fashion films, have either of you seen Someone Is Watching Me? Oh, no, Eyes of Laura Dern. Sorry, Eyes of Laura Mars.
Jeez. Not in a very, very long time, but I've seen that one.
It just reminded me because Renee Odo, who's recently passed away.
Right.
Oh.
He plays this kind of over-the-top fashion assistant slash. He's kind of in the world of fashion, hanging out with Laura Mars, and he does it perfectly.
Yeah, I remember liking that film, but it's been so long, it's hard to have specifics.
Super good. It has kind of a silly moment in it.
Am I completely off base? Did Carpenter write that? John Carpenter?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
it's on my Carpenter shelf.
Nice. Okay.
Ooh, a Carpenter shelf. I like it.
I do. Yeah, I've got one. Bad Moon Rising, also written by him. Not so good.
John Carpenter wrote Bad Moon Rising? Mm-hmm. Wow.
The one with the car?
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
That's
that
surprising?
Oh, I want to. Who's the lead in that?
Tommy Lee Jones.
That's what I was going to say. Tommy Lee Jones. Wow.
Eyes of Laura Mars. Eyes of Laura Mars. My brain just wants to not say that out loud.
Worst part about that. No, Black Moon Rising, not Bad Moon Rising. Black Moon Rising.
You're right.
Worst part about that is that car just looks ridiculously
it looks so
stupid.
Dumb. And if you put Tommy Lee Jones in it, it looks even dumber. That guy is tall. So you're just like, oh, don't get beheaded in your tiny little sports car there, Mr.
Sort of
Tommy
like
Lee.
Tom Selleck occasionally in Magnum with his Ferrari, half his head sticking out of the top of it.
Oh my gosh, it looks so dumb. It's like they got a car prop and then built a film around it. It's really, really poor work. And Linda Hamilton, I think, is in that with him.
Oh, God, yeah. Now you're making me want to watch this stupid movie. I remember it being pretty dumb.
Get drunk first. That'll help.
All right, no problem.
Anyone else? What else got?
Oh, I actually saw I Lost My Body on Netflix. It's this animated film that everyone's been kind of freaking out about.
I have not heard of this.
Maybe it's just the one film reviewer I listened to has been freaking out about it. But yeah, it's the story of a hand that has lost its body, and as it's on a journey to try and find it again, we learn more about the owner and the situation. It's I mean, the hand moments are played out like a silent film, so you get a lot of gestures and expression out of the way that it moves and kind of I don't know, the way it contorts itself, and it's really lovely. It's a really sad, nice little piece. It's French.
Interesting. Does that have they somehow anthropomorphized this hand?
A little, yeah.
Does it have like a mouth?
Oh no, I'm sorry. No, it doesn't. No, it's just a hand. It's just as if like, from like Addams Family, if that hand just has a movie that's animated around it.
It's not a hamburger helper hand wandering around and smiling and talking to people.
No. It gets into a couple fights. It gets into a fight with a pigeon, a rat. The huge. But I would definitely check it out, especially if you like. It almost has a Miyazaki feel to it, but it's a little sadder and a little darker.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I saw, so you guys don't have to, Amityville Murders.
I have not even heard of it.
It's the latest in the Amityville horror series.
But of course.
I think that there's, no lie, I think there's 13 or 14 of these movies now.
A crap ton of them, yeah.
This one is, strangely enough, it is supposedly the original murders, the DeFeo murders that happened in the house prior to the Lutzes moving in. It is instead almost a very close remake of Amityville Horror 2,
which is I like that film.
I like it better than the first one for sure. And I like this better than the first one. I think the Amityville Horror is trash movie, man. Fucked up.
Damn, son.
Awful. Margot Kidder is awful. What's his name is awful. Everybody's fucking awful in this. The weirdest part of this, though, in the Amityville Horror 2, Burt Young, who was Uncle Paulie in the Rocky movies and all that, he plays the dad in that, right? Well, he... in a remake of that movie, plays the dad's dad.
Oh, weird.
In this one, he plays the grandpa. Even stranger, in Amityville Horror 2, the young sister is played by a very young, striking Diane Franklin, who plays the mom in this movie. So they're
little stunt
obviously
casting going on
yeah,
there.
they're obviously trying to, and there's some fun stuff at the beginning of this. But then it just kind of falls off the rails and falls into some really bad CGI work.
Oh.
This would have been actually a lot better film. What they're doing is they're playing on the whole thing that Ronald DeFeo was saying, that he heard voices that were telling him to kill his family. And that's how this goes here. But as in the Amityville Horror 2, they decided to make it supernatural voices, and they make it very obvious that it's demonic entities making him do this.
Is it the pig demon again?
No, they don't. We don't get to see Jody, thank God. We don't get to see a couple of Christmas lights blinking outside the window. But
just two,
right? But they have these really bad CGI effects for the demons, and I was like, you know what? If we had just kept this all in his head, instead of making it very clear that yes, this
really
was happening,
creepy.
I thought it would have been creepy because this was a very well acted film. Low budget, I'd say it's even better than Amityville Horror 2, which was probably the best of that bunch of movies. Although the last
Three's
one
got its very special moments. I mean, 3D.
The last Amityville Horror film had Jennifer Jason Leigh in it, and it was halfway decent.
Yeah.
I don't think
This
I
was
saw
only
that
maybe
one.
a year ago. So, yeah.
Is it a remake, a reboot, a something?
No, they're just this is a franchise
Crank
name
it
that
out.
they can, in a very recognizable house facade that they can slap onto anything they're doing. This house looks very much like it's CGI, unfortunately, probably because the people who are living in the house now are, I'm sure, are like, can we just move on, you guys?
Yeah, you can use our house. $250,000.
Right.
Just
Help
to
us pay
show
off the
the
mortgage.
outside in one shot. Oh. But I haven't tortured myself with that series. Hellraiser is the one I do, which I've seen
I'm
every one of
so
those.
sorry.
But the Amityville ones, I'm like, no, I'm good.
I haven't minded too much the ones I've seen, but I haven't seen any of the really, really, really awful ones yet. Yeah. Although I hear that the Ryan Reynolds one is genuinely creepy in a number of places.
No, it's not. It's bad.
Oh, okay.
It was weird because it's one of those movies I feel like all the elements were there for it to be creepy, but whoever set the beats set them off just enough to where all those creepy moments just didn't hit.
Didn't land.
Like, oh, this is so weird. It feels like it should be scary, but I'm getting nothing out of it.
Huh. Interesting.
It fell in that early 2000s part where they were remaking every horror film, and it was really glossy and slick, and it was just like it had zero scares in it.
Ryan Reynolds all ripped up and looking like he's already a superhero. It's just like
before the Ryan Reynolds back when we didn't like Ryan Reynolds.
I've actually always kind of liked Ryan Reynolds.
Really? I think I just lumped him in with the guy from American Pie, that blonde dude.
He went from goofy guy like that, which I still didn't dislike, to after Buried,
which I haven't seen.
Holy shit!
Desperate to see
this
that
guy's
movie.
a freaking actor.
Yeah, he was definitely trying to make a point and saying, "Look, you guys, I want to break out of the National Lampoon movies if you don't mind." Although I did like Van Wilder. I thought he was funny in Van Wilder.
Sure. Well, the other one that I saw that I did end up liking overall is a film called Bliss.
Yeah, we talked about this one.
Super low budget film. So have either of you seen this one then?
Yeah, remember I talked about this a couple weeks ago?
Okay, that's right, yeah. I started off not liking it at all, actually. I'm going, I think I'm going to hate this film. I don't like the acting. I don't like what's going on. I don't like where it's going. And by the end, I'm going, I think I kind of like this film. This is really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And it did it didn't do the one thing I was dreading it was going to do the whole time. I thought at some point the destruction of that painting was going to happen. I was kind of glad it didn't happen. That always seems to be that moment in artistic-based tortured artist films where they destroy their work.
Right.
Let's not do that just this one. Hey, they didn't. All right. There was one problem I had with the film. I'm going to preface this so I don't say fuck like 14 times in a row. I'm just going to say F now instead of that because I just don't feel like saying it 15 or 16 times. When you're saying and you're trying to emphasize things, if you say F every 4 or 5 words, or let's see, if we don't F do this, we're going to F and die. We got to get an F and ambulance. Save that word for when it has impact.
Right.
That one of the last 2 or 3 scenes or something like, well, the lead actress starts doing it about halfway through the film. Where it's like, Jesus Christ, man, every line doesn't have to have 3 or 4. And then the guy shows up at the end and his totally innocuous lines are filled with swearing too. Like, this is just lazy. Come on, people. You're ruining the power of the film by using one word over and over again. It'd be the same thing if they were using water bottle.
Right.
You know, hey, this water bottle needs to go and get those water bottles over there. It doesn't work.
Yeah. I think I've only ever seen that tactic used once properly, which was in an episode of The Wire where
yes.
With that scene where no one says anything other than shit through the
No.
Oh. And
it's fuck.
Oh, was it fuck?
Yeah,
Really?
every single word.
Oh, okay.
It
was great.
The 2 lead guys are doing a crime scene.
Yeah.
And every word, that's the only word they use as they come across things. And that's brilliant.
It's brilliant.
It's so good.
But yeah, if you're just using it as a cheap way to emphasize like stress, no good.
It gets old really quick.
I'm going to guess that this was the actors bringing that in more than the script. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I work with a lot of guys who are laborers that do stuff and everything, and every other word is fuck. It's just how they speak, and it doesn't really work in film because it becomes very obvious, and also people use it. They use it and they say it weirdly. They say, fuck, and they put a lot of emphasis on this word, but when you use it all the time, you don't even realize you're saying it. Yeah. It's just, well, I went to this fucking place and I did this fucking thing and everything. Yep. And so, yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I thought that the fact that she was a drug addict and kind of unbalanced artist, it all felt very real to me. Whether or not it worked in the film, I don't know, but it did feel like a real kind of person.
I think it was when the other guy showed up that it really hit me, where he felt like he was pushing to do it, where her ex-boyfriend or whatever it was showed up near the end. I don't know. I found it by the end, I found it an interesting film with some strange stuff to like and a lot of potential for the next couple movies made by this group of filmmakers. I think I'll go see that.
Yeah, well, that's the guy. His next film is this one that I'm waiting on, VFW.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm very excited to see what that is.
Well, I watched an old classic because we're still sort of in the holiday season, just a titch.
Sure.
So I was catching up on the Joe Bob Christmas special and rewatched Black Christmas. So
is that the original? I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I haven't seen the new one yet. I've got to catch it.
Well,
yeah, I
not.
love the original Black Christmas. I think it's just a really neat film. And what you were saying about not destroying the painting totally reminded me of the moment where the guy completely destroys the piano, and you're like, good Lord, man. I guess your audition didn't go well, but jeez, that poor piano. You're a little unhinged.
Oh, cool. I did see a movie that I liked quite a bit that just came out on Netflix, and it is called Sweetheart.
Huh.
Nothing?
Don't know
Haven't
that
heard
one.
of it.
It's a new Blumhouse film. And it is about this gal who's out on a boat with some friends, and a huge storm comes up and the boat is capsized. She ends up on an island by herself. But there is something else on the island with her. Every night this thing shows up, kind of terrorizes her.
Jeez.
And pretty soon you realize, not on the island. It's coming from the water every night and stalking her. And so she's making all these little traps so she can kind of see what it is. And when she finally sees what it is, it's like, Jesus, that's cool looking. It's very much a creature feature. a couple of the other people from the boat suddenly show up on the island. They're on like a little life raft and they've made it there and they're so happy to have made it to an island. And she's like, everybody pack up. We are getting the fuck out of here. So there's conflict with them because they're like, oh, no, we're not. Where are we going to end up? And she goes, we can't stay here. So it's kind of a, you know, believe it or not, it's a weird mishmash of Castaway and Predator almost.
Ooh.
Cool.
And I really enjoyed it. It's brand new. It's on Netflix. It is called Sweetheart.
Awesome. That sounds
There's
fantastic.
just so many that come out. Sometimes it's hard to keep up when, you know.
Yeah.
I think my Netflix is betraying me. I think it's like purposely not telling me about the cool new content. Like it's been telling me the same dumb movies since like December 1st.
Well, it saw that you were like, what was it? Marriage Story? It was just like, oh, this is what you want to watch? We got a lot more like this.
That's right.
In which case, I'm just like on an island of no.
Please, no.
My mom and sister have probably been using it to watch like knockoff Hallmark movies. So that's most likely what's occurring right now. I'm like, let it snow. I watched that weeks ago. I don't want to see that again.
I think if there's anything else of interest. And
Just a lot more Christmas horror films.
Oh, tell us.
Yeah, I saw finally Silent Night, Deadly Night 2.
Okay.
That was
nice.
an experience.
There's some interesting acting choices in that one. You might say over the top, I guess.
I was like, I don't know if I'd even call it acting. It's like you pull a guy off the street and give him some lines and tell him more. But like it wasn't, I mean, it felt right for that film. I don't know. It didn't bother me too much that it was insanely
Just
over the top.
so tonally different from, did you see the first one?
No, I
Okay.
only saw the first one by watching the second one.
Oh, the first one is it's kind of a really dark, ugly movie.
Oh, interesting.
It takes itself very seriously. And that's why I think it had all the
my
problems
God.
it had. And then the second one, I think, is a little more lighthearted and fun.
Right. Well, and I don't know. Have you seen it as well, Eric?
Probably.
Okay. Yeah. Because the first half of it is just footage from the old movie,
Oh, yes,
basically.
yeah.
So, yeah. So it didn't even, because it's being narrated by the person it's being narrated by, like, I didn't even realize that it was supposed to be a different tone. Because he's just like, let me tell you, Doc, about my history. It's real tough. And then they show like a scene and they come back. What do you think, Doc? That enough of pain for you? Yeah.
The history of this movie is interesting, though, because it got pulled after 1 week, or Silent Night, Deadly Night got pulled after 1 week in the theaters. And this was back before you'd just release it then as video.
Yeah. You have to wait 6 months or
Right.
more for it to come out on video.
So it was pulled, and the company basically hired the director of Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 to re-edit it so they could put it back in theaters. And he convinced them to give him more money to shoot new footage. And that's why
wild.
so much of it is flashbacks and so
so
much of it
funny.
is new footage. So
I mean, like, it's some creative cutting. Like,
Yeah.
I will definitely give them that. I think they used the previous stuff effectively, but yeah, that guy, I don't know. The new stuff is pretty. And I didn't realize they're supposed to be, is he in high school age?
I think
I'm
he's
very confused.
maybe a little older than that. I can't
There was
quite
some
remember. I have a soft spot in
insinuation.
my heart for these movies.
Yeah,
They're
no.
bad, but I love them.
Definitely. I also managed to just see Christmas Evil, and it was bad, but also had
Yeah.
a really nice. I also
It
had
still got the holiday spirit.
It did. It had the holiday spirit. I was like, oh, but your brother really loves you. Kind of.
I did see one I think I liked a little more than both of you, although I can't disagree with your criticisms of it. It's Yesterday.
Oh, all right.
And that's probably because I was set up
Oh, okay,
for
good.
the kind of lukewarm way it ends.
Hey, if any positivity comes out of our not enjoyment, then I'm thrilled.
For me, almost because of the what you'd said about straightforward way it ends, from beginning to end, it's like, you tell me you love me and we're together to the end. And that's all that happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, all right. And I think for me, the highlight ending, I would just call the, when the two people that remember talk to him in the behind
yeah.
stage.
Right.
Yeah.
That was, I thought, okay, I'll call this the end, kind of the ending of the movie, and the rest is the denouement. This part's really fun and really kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly moments I liked in it. I just felt for the kind of movie it was, there are beats that were just completely ignored. There's no boy loses girl moment and boy gets girl back. You're like, what are we rooting for here?
Boy steals girl from very nice boy.
That's
right.
pretty much, yeah.
He doesn't learn his lesson. He
change.
He has said, I've made up these songs. The end of this film should have been him having to explain.
Yeah, to the crowd.
That this is not my music. Yeah. And then, then basically coming out and coming up with an original song that everybody loves. That's the way this film was aimed to end at. And when it doesn't, you're like, wait a second, this guy was just kind of a sneak and a liar through the film, and he wins.
Yep.
I'm not sure what's going on with Richard Curtis, because About Time was also very odd.
Yeah, but I like that one a lot more than yesterday.
I felt
a lot more.
Equally, confused.
I was set up for the ending to be kind of down, so it made the rest of the movie, all right, okay. There we're right. It definitely did not do what romantic comedy should do, but all right. Music's fun. This is fun. I'm good.
I thought he performed it surprisingly well. Performed the Beatles songs and everything. He did a great job.
Well, should we take a little break, you guys?
So.
And
that'd be great.
Jump into our invisibility films.
We can look into that.
We'll be right back.
Welcome. I am the Invisible Man, and this is my invisible son.
Greetings.
Adding a new bug to his collection.
With Scotch Magic transparent tape.
Unlike this old-fashioned cellophane tape, it isn't shiny on the bug. It remains virtually invisible year after year.
And so do we.
Scotch brand Magic transparent tape. It's magic.
And we are back. We're talking invisibility films. Vanessa, you chose this.
I did. Yeah. Well, I thought it'd be really neat. I recently saw for the first time Invisible Man.
The original.
Okay. Which was super fun. And I was just thrilled and really enjoying the invisible moments, stealing the bicycle and everything. And I just thought, it'd be a really fun genre to hop into.
Yeah, that was James Whale also, wasn't it?
I think
The Invisible Man.
So.
He's involved with it somehow. I don't remember if he directed or wrote it, but he was involved with it.
Yeah. And then Claude Rains has got the best maniacal laugh in the world.
Gosh. And it's so goofy. That film really is, it kind of ends on nothing. But at the same time, the whole journey, I was like, yes, take me along with you, mad invisible man.
It's definitely one of the more underrated of the Universal classics.
It might be my favorite, to be honest. After watching it just recently again, I was like, this movie is great.
Yeah, and it has such an interesting premise that I really felt like maybe exploring the invisible genre would lead to possibly some gems.
Yeah.
But
I can't wait to hear what you picked. Then.
Yeah. No, it's so I went on No, it's okay. It's just I went on a bit of a journey with this. I thought I loved Invisible Man, and when I was a teenager, I really, really liked The Invisible, which I decided not to do because I've already seen it. Where it's like a boy who has an out-of-body experience, and it's really, really neat. And then I was like, okay, so let's check out these other Invisible movies. And I had a list of 30 Invisible films.
Oh, jeez.
And so I started with Astral Factor, which is horrible.
That almost sounds like a really, really bad title. The what kind of factor?
Astral Factor. Yeah, it's a murderer who has the ability to become invisible through magic of his mind, occasionally just making him invisible. And I turned it off after 20 minutes. I couldn't handle it.
It's kind of a neat idea.
It was a neat idea. It's horribly executed. The second main character in it is the boom mic.
Oh no! Oh no!
It was just so rough. Everything's horrible about this. Nothing in this is good. The acting especially is bad. But the serial killer becoming invisible is interesting, but every scene is just painful. So I turned that off, and then I switched over to Invisible Kid, which I also had to not go with in the end because I cannot exactly say what happens in that movie for multiple reasons. First of all, the script is like nonsense, and it's just like the 80s. You guys liked teen 80s films. Here's all of them together, and don't worry, the girl who just got kind of stalked and like rapily stared at is now on their side and helping them on their wacky adventure. So that was a little bit tough. And also I watched it on YouTube at like 148. Like that's the pixels, like not 1080, not 720, 148.
Oh my.
It was just a mosaic. It was just a walking smudge painting. So I decided to just go ahead and give that one a pass, and I ended up on Hollow Man.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Ed. Your team's in early today. Something special going on? Sorry, Ed. You know the rules.
If we're gonna move forward, this is the next logical step.
I'm ready for you.
Are you sure?
Positive. Here goes nothing.
Sebastian? Are you in here? So, what's it like being a ghost?
Ghost or dead, I'm very much alive.
The question is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't be seen?
You trust your eyes. You rely on your senses.
Sebastian, this is not funny.
You think you're alone.
Why did you have to go out in public?
You have no idea what it's like. The power of it, the freedom. It's amazing what you can do when you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror anymore.
Okay, Sebastian, fun's over. Tell us where you are.
Sorry, Linda. You'll never be sure again.
He could be here. He could be anywhere.
There's more to fear than you can see. You have no idea how much fun this is.
So I don't know if you guys have seen Hollow Man. Remember Hollow Man?
This is the one with Kevin Bacon, right?
It is, yeah, Kevin Bacon.
Saw it in the theater.
Paul Verhoeven, did he direct this?
It is.
Yeah.
It is a Paul Verhoeven joint.
Right there establishes a few of the kind of scenes you probably will expect to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say, it's kind of interesting. So it came out in 2000. It actually had a decent budget, $95 million. Box office raked it in. It had 190.2.
Yeah, it did well.
It did really
kind of a
good.
nice mini hit.
But the critics on Rotten Tomatoes have it at a 28%, and the audience is 27%.
Wow.
Crap.
So people hate this movie. Like they went and saw it, but they hated this film.
It's pretty ugly.
This film will not age well
Yeah.
in the current climate of film watching. There's some rough scenes.
There are definitely some rough scenes, and that's something that I definitely want to talk about. But actually, I have to say, having watched it with expectations that it wasn't going to be very good, I thought it was surprisingly good. Just by being virtue of the fact it being a Paul Verhoeven picture, it's coming off of the back of Starship Troopers. It has that. It has his art in there. It has his style, and you can't. The acting is top notch. Sure. The CGI, kind of ages, but also really is impressive for the time. It's way better than almost all the CGI of that era. So let me get into it a little bit here. So The film, the basic plot is a bunch of scientists in kind of underground government facility in Washington, D.C. are given a project to create invisibility and then also create a way to reverse the invisibility. I'm assuming for some kind of like super soldier sort of project.
Yeah.
Always.
Of course. Yeah.
The only way. And it's great because it starts off with them already having figured out invisibility. So the entire film is them trying to figure out how to get that visible part back again. Nice. So kind of an interesting setup. It's starring Kevin Bacon, who you guys will know from being 12 Degrees of any such person.
6 degrees.
6 degrees?
Yeah.
I'm going to change that right now. 6 degrees. Kevin
Make that part of your permanent notes.
Bacon. Yeah, these things are going to be gold branded. Elizabeth Shue, who you guys will know from probably Leaving Las Vegas, but also recently in The Boys. She's phenomenal in that. I grew up with her in Adventures in Babysitting.
And Karate Kid. Yeah.
There you go. See, I didn't even have that written down. Josh Brolin, an up and coming actor you probably wouldn't have seen in anything other than.
I forgot so too. 20 years ago. Wow.
No, he's like the secondary love interest, kind of the side scientist.
Okay. Of course.
He's everyone else. If you don't know him, he's Thanos in the Avengers films. And apparently his first film ever was in The Goonies.
Yes.
Which I did not realize.
He's the almost teenager boy that the girl has a crush on.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. I saw that on his credits and was like, whoa, hold the phone. Kim Dickinson, who I think at the time was kind of a hot thing. She's still around very much so. She does a lot of TV work right now. She did Deadwood, Treme, and was in all of Walking Dead as a character called Madison. But I almost didn't recognize her. I think she was one of those 90s, like, she's hot and sexy and young, awesome girl. Let's put her in everything. And then kind of fell to more side characters. And then we have Greg Grunberg. I'm trying to read my own handwriting. Who plays this scientist named Carter. You guys will probably have seen him in pretty much every J.J. Abrams project.
Greg Grunberg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Grunberg. There we are.
He was even in Rise of Skywalker.
He was. He's in the Star Wars, what are they called now? Star Wars editions? Sequels?
The third trilogy?
Third trilogy of the trilogy
Skywalker
series.
Saga.
There we go. Skywalker Saga. There we are. He's Snap Wexley in that. He was also in Alias. He was in Heroes. He was in Felicity. So he's one of those characters who just keeps popping up in the J.J. Abrams universe, much like Felicity. Yeah. Did you see that in Star Wars?
She's the masked girl.
She is the masked girl.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually
Carrie Russell.
Yep, Carrie Russell, which I was struggling to figure out who she was. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God. Well, JJ is very true to his people. This film, it actually, I thought it had some really interesting things going on in it. Not least of which, I really do think the CGI was pretty impressive. The way they went about it, apparently, it was that they shot it in chronological order, first of all. Which is
really
pretty crazy.
Wow.
They spent $50 million of their $95 just on CGI. They had 560 VFX shots, and at any one time, I believe they had 16 cameras going. Oh no, 14. 14 cameras.
Oh, well, that's not
constantly.
So many. 16 would have been crazy.
16 would have been crazy. 14, he could have tried harder.
Damn. I'm starting to see why Verhoeven is not making very many films anymore. This sounds like someone the studio goes, look, we like you, but we can't just keep doing this shit.
Yeah.
We can let James Cameron do that because he makes us billions of dollars every time he makes a movie. But
you only doubled the profits, so not so hot, Mr. Verhoeven. I mean, I will say, like, it felt very thoughtful. It felt like the plot was really well structured. So you're following Mr. Bacon as Mr. Bacon as he is this sort of very bigger than life character, very into himself scientist guy who thinks he's super cool and super rad. And he decides that once they've successfully turned invisible and unturned invisible, some different primates, he would like to test it on himself. And the government, of course, says, no. You guys, why don't you finish up your work and then be done with this? And instead, he then tells everybody in their little science group, nope, they approved it. Let's go ahead and make me invisible. Let's do this, guys. And you spend the rest of the film kind of following him and his descent into madness, but also into the characteristics he's already portraying, or presenting. So he just becomes more of himself, but extreme. There is this sort of hint that the longer you're invisible, the crazier you go and the more aggressive you become.
Sure.
But it just sort of naturally happens in here. I will say that Kevin Bacon is terrifying. He's really creepy. They picked well when they decided on him. I guess they were choosing between also looking at Guy Pearce and Ed Norton as the role, but they chose Kevin Bacon because he was both charming and diabolical.
Nice.
Which I thought was great. They really went to town on this CGI effects they initially weren't going to have him very much on set at all, but then they realized the other actors really needed to bounce off of him and his character. So they had him walk around in a green latex suit, a green face mask, green contact lenses, and a green dental plate.
Wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
So he did the whole film. Basically, he's there. They shot everything obviously twice because you want to have those plates for all those shots.
So glad you other actors are getting something to act against. Maybe you don't realize how difficult it is for me to fucking emote while I've got a dental dam in my mouth.
That would be tough.
I thought that was really interesting because I think 2000's that early CGI time, right?
Yeah.
So before they'd really established that, actually, why don't we just have it be a pretend city and you can hold this pillow and pretend it's a baby. Right. You know, like instead of being like, no, we'll just wrap the baby in green. It'll be fine. You know, I think it's a different approach and it worked out pretty well. The acting in this is really good. My favorite moments in this film are really Elizabeth Shue's chemistry, both with Kevin Bacon and with Brolin. She just has this great simmering, like she can just bring this romance out of anything. I was really highly impressed by that. The acting from everybody across the board was great. And science is just so much fun in this film. So they have these sort of orange goggles that they keep putting on so they can see the heat wave off of the different invisible creatures. Because it's not just Kevin Bacon. They've been experimenting on all kinds of other animals through this whole time. So they're constantly kind of putting these goggles on and making use of that. But the war of science, when he finally loses it and it becomes this sort of horror film where he's trying to destroy all of them inside of this elaborate scientific lab, he's using things like, I'm going to break this pipe and use the heat so they can't see me with their goggles, or I'm going to turn up the temperature so no one can see me. A girl who's kind of stuck in a room with him is like, well, I'm stuck in a room with this guy. I can't see him. And she just starts puncturing these blood bags and just throwing them across the room.
Oh, that's right.
In a circle around her. And you're like, oh my God, like, it's so clever. Like everything in here is really, it's not just somebody's being dumb.
These are smart people in a weird situation behaving smartly.
Yes. And it's incredible. Yeah. Like he's making a dirty bomb at one point out of, like the different acids that he has and the little weird spinning mechanism that separates out liquid materials. I can't quite remember specifically if it's just for blood or what, and in the meantime, like we've got Elizabeth Shue at one point. She's trapped in this freezer that's at like below 20 and he's trying to freeze to death her and Brolin. And she, using the things in the room, creates a huge magnet that she then uses to open this giant bolt on the door from the other side. And you're just like, that's so clever. Like, I don't know whether or not it's actually scientifically accurate, but through the whole thing, it's just very impressive. At no point are you thinking like, oh, you're dumb. Why'd you run upstairs?
I feel like I interrupted you when you were first talking about this. Did you say who the writer was and what his credits were?
Right. So the writer, I don't think I did actually hit him. It's done by Andrew W. Marlowe, who did End of Days, Air Force One, Hollow Man 2. And then he kind of stepped away from films and has done 173 episodes of Castle.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So
he's probably a showrunner for Castle.
Yeah. He's very heavily involved. So he's got like some good credits behind him. And I do think that it shows. I think that as much as the downsides of this film are, and I don't think there's as many as people think. The CGI can be seen as not great. There's a scene in which Kevin Bacon's in a swimming pool. And I think the CGI in that's particularly shoddy. There's Kevin Bacon's end scream. I won't say whether or not he actually dies, but there's a enormous scream at the end and it is cheesy as hell. And you're like, dude, you were like nailing it up until this moment. But the hardest part about this entire thing, honestly, is this kind of sexual assault that's consistent throughout it. And it's a little ambiguous because they do a lot of POV where they almost over-sexualize some of the things that he's doing. So at one point there's a girl who's asleep and he undoes her shirt and starts fondling her. And you see it through his perspective. And it's almost shot, I would say, like, not... It's kind of pornographic in the way that it is. So I can see an audience feeling really unhappy and like angry at the film for putting them in that position. So I can't fault
kind of like Peeping
that.
Tom, where you make the audience
like experience
attacker.
Those horrible things, and it's multiple times. Like every time there's a sexual situation, you often are going through his perspective of it. So there's a lot of kind of rapiness in it. But however, unlike the other Invisible films in which I looked at, this one at least didn't see it as a joke. Like at least this film wasn't like, ha, they're in the girls' locker room.
Right.
They're gonna try and grab her crotch while she doesn't know. No, this one's like, yeah, it's going to happen and it's horrible. Yeah. It's absolutely awful. But I will say, you know, like that just adds to this really horrible, creepy factor to it. I think it's actually draws that line between science fiction and horror really nicely. It really rides that appropriately. The music in it is wonderful. I forgot to look up who the composer was, but it almost feels like, I hate to say it feels like Jurassic Park. The way that the beats are, the way we're led from action to action, it just structurally, musically, the acting level, it reminded me a lot of the level of Jurassic Park. So maybe you don't like the content, maybe the CGI didn't work for everybody, but I really feel like it's been given a disservice by how people look down on it.
I think it's interesting you say that because I remember way back then thinking this would be The Invisible Man if Michael Crichton wrote it.
Right. It does. It feels like that. The way in which the script works, it feels so much like a Michael Crichton piece.
Yeah, I can see
You're
that.
making me want to watch it again. I haven't seen it in forever. I do remember the scenes you're talking about feeling very much like they were kind of celebrating his rapiness, which
I didn't get that
made me
sense at
feel
all.
uncomfortable. But I do remember liking this movie. I thought it was a really effective, creepy film.
I think it's super effective. I think that you can tell from the way that the women act around him afterwards that this is, I felt like that was a good nod towards this isn't okay, although it's pre-Me Too, so there's no like, fuck you, like you fucking can't do that to me. It's much more, oh, I'm now stuck alone with this person. I think he did something to me and I'm not sure, but I feel really uncool and I'm going to edge around the room away from him. And I feel like that kind of response by just at least showing that really helped to take away a little bit of the power. But it was kind of weirdly played sexy. So I don't know. It's a very hard line to ride, but I will say, I think you should explore the film again because it, as far as Invisible film goes, I was really happy to have found it.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice. I'll go next. I chose for my film Invisible Agent.
There's an enemy spy at large, an invisible man. It's amazing. Oh, you will be of great help to us.
Who is this terrifying Phantom Commando? What is his amazing mission? See The Invisible Agent, suggested by H.G. Wells' Invisible Man, starring Ilona Massey and John Hall, with Peter Lorre, Sir Cedric Hardwicke, J. Edward Bromberg, Albert Basserman, in the most amazing story of our times.
Steady now. Don't let him get away.
Gesundheit. Who is there?
How did you know I was going to England?
I didn't, but...
So the trap was all set, eh?
Frank, how can you talk like that?
Oh, what's this? It's full of hooks. Oh, they're tearing into me.
1942.
I am so jealous. I tried to find this film so hard and could not track it down.
This is a difficult one to find. It was written by Kurt Siodmak, who wrote The Invisible Man Returns. Directed by Edwin L. Marin, who has got under his resume just a ton of westerns and mysteries. And you got to remember, this is 1942. So he was a Universal under contract director. They basically told him what his next movie was each time. So he's got 100 titles, and it runs the gamut of everything Universal put out from like 1933 to 1946. It stars John Hall, who was in The Invisible Man's Revenge and then dozens of other films because he was probably a contract player for Universal as well. It stars the amazing Peter Lorre from M, Maltese Falcon, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and hundreds of other films.
One of the greats.
Yeah. And Ilona Massey, who she's been in a bunch of other films, but really for Universal, it looked like Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and this were it for them. This is when you start getting into the fun stuff. 1942. Remember, we're in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
Budget, $323,000.
Whoa.
Jeez. Box office, $1 million. Just a little over $1 million.
Wow.
Okay.
Rotten Tomatoes, the critics have it at 0. Apparently, there were no critic reviews available. The audience has it at 31%.
Oh.
I have thoughts on this because this is not a bad film. Hall plays Frank Griffin, who is the grandson of the original Invisible Man. And at the beginning of the film, he is running a printing press. And I don't know, it seems weird because you know how difficult things were back then. We were conserving paper, we were conserving everything. But he is running a printing press, and I'm not sure exactly why they made that his thing. But
access to a printer.
Right. These 4 Nazi agents show up in something right out of any Indiana Jones movie. I mean, if you like the Indiana Jones movies, you're going to love this because it is structured just like an Indiana Jones film.
That sounds awesome.
They show up and they are after the invisibility formula that his grandfather had, and he's like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And they then they rough him up, and they've got his hand under like this gigantic paper cutter that they're just going to chop off his hand. And he says, hold on, all right, I'll give it to you. And he opens this drawer. It's got a like false bottom on it, and he brings out this really cool box, and then he slams it into this guy's face, and the lights go out, and everyone's trying to figure out what's going on, and he escapes, and he ends up talking to the United States authorities, who are like, look, we'd never make you give up this formula, but it sure would be a help if you did. And he says, no, I saw what it did to my grandfather, and I will not let it go out under any circumstance. And then through spinning newspapers, we see that the bombing of Pearl Harbor has happened, and he basically says, okay, all right, now that we're in this war, I'm going to help out. So the rest of the film is him at first kind of misadventuring his way through Germany. He gets dropped off via parachute over Germany injects himself with the serum as he's dropping. Spotlights are shooting up and seeing his parachute and everything, but he starts taking off his clothes, and when the parachute lands, it's just an empty parachute. And so,
beautiful.
Yeah, so the Nazis are all going, "What's going on here? He went into this barn," and they can't find him at all. And he makes his way to. There are a couple of agents, double agents that are in Germany that are waiting for him. They don't realize they're waiting for an invisible man. They were told that they that they would be getting a spy who knew how to conceal himself very well. And so they start helping him. And the movie, as I'm watching it, I was like, wow, this is such a weird tone for a war film because it's almost comedic, an early 40s comedy, because at one point he's like playing pranks on Nazi officers and stuff like that, and they're getting flustered and what's going on around here, and, reaching for something and it's no longer there, and all of that, and it's kind of silly. But then when he finds out that there is a secret attack on New York City being planned, then it kind of turns into almost a typical propaganda war film from the times. He's now racing against the clock, and he's got to stop the Nazis' evil plans. And it turns into, a pretty cool adventure film.
All that in probably, under 70 minutes?
Well, yeah, it is a scant, 82 minutes long, so it is not a really long film or anything like that. So, at one point, though, he does get captured because the Nazis have figured out, wait, this is the guy we were trying to get, and he's got the formula, and we might not be able to get the formula from him, but if we capture him, we can extract it from his body. And there is a really cool scene where they do capture him, and they've got him under, a really thin blanket that you can kind of see through, and you can see the shape of his body under it, but you cannot see his body. So it's a really neat effect. This is the same guy who was doing the effects for the original Invisible Man. So there's some really cool stuff that's going on in this thing, especially for the time. It does follow a lot of the propaganda war film and spy film tropes of the time. So there is a mad scientist in the form of Peter Lorre who wants this stuff, and I'll get to that because that's a little problematic. It's got these really silly elements, and it is because the writer Kurt Siodmak was a refugee of Nazi Germany. He made sure to make the Nazis look like bumbling fools in this. He was just like, this is my revenge. It's got a really neat, like I said, Indiana Jones kind of ending where he has to stop the secret attack that's being planned on New York City, and he's got to fly in a German airplane while they're waiting for this attack to happen. And of course, he's got to get the signal out. The invisibility serum makes him weak. They never really touch on the insanity thing that the first couple of Invisible Man movies had. And when you see Hollow Man, that's definitely a throwback to The Invisible Man, where the serum makes you crazy. And you see that in almost every movie. I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer for the new Invisible Man movie.
Yes.
And that's clearly what's going on there, too, is the guy is insane. This one, they don't touch on that, but it does make him weak. And at some point, he needs to take an injection that will counteract the effects of this.
Good old B12.
Yeah, something like that. And if he doesn't get it, he's going to die.
Is he invisible through pretty much the whole thing?
Almost through the entire film.
Wow.
So we see him at the beginning, and then the part where he tells them, under no circumstance will I ever let this happen. And then as soon as he jumps out of the plane, all the way to the very end where maybe he becomes visible again. I won't give that away.
That's
I do have to give it away because it's such a great moment. He is lying in a hospital bed, and the agent that has been helping him, who of course is stunningly beautiful. She's never seen him, but she's, fallen for him through all of these adventures. And she starts taking off his bandages and scrubbing off the stuff that's on his face, and she can see his skin underneath it. And she scrubs it all off, and she looks at him, and she does a wolf whistle, It's hilarious.
Wow.
So she meets with, he meets with her approval as far as his looks go. It's a really cute. It's totally a family movie, even with the uncomfortable use of Japs throughout. All of the stuff that was going on. We weren't very thrilled with the Japanese right after Pearl Harbor, so You can kind of understand why we were feeling that way. But here's where it gets really weird. Peter Lorre, he plays Baron Ikito, an evil Japanese agent.
Oh, no.
No change to his face or makeup or even his speaking pattern or anything. He is just a Japanese agent.
Peter Lorre being called a Japanese agent.
Yeah, and you understand that. And the thing is, there are Japanese actors in this film, but star names, they trump everything. So they put him in there. Just to make things a little weirder, Peter Lorre played a character named Mr. Moto, who was a Japanese detective in like 10 other films.
Oh my God. Did people somehow think he looked Asian?
He was just so odd looking. That was kind of his thing, was that he always
weird looking.
He played like an evil foreigner. Whatever he was needed to play, like as an evil foreigner, he just was.
Man.
Even in the film Around the World in 80 Days, he plays a Japanese character. That film was like in the 60s, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Like, they can't even be like, he's a turncoat. He's working for the enemy.
No. Just
wow,
sinister. I'm sinister looking. And he was weird looking.
Oh, yeah, he's a strange looking guy.
Had a very strange way of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually really liked this movie, and doing a little research, I thought one of the things that was the most interesting was a big, huge thing right in the beginning credits, based on characters created by H.G. Wells. Digging into this a little bit, H.G. Wells made a deal with Universal with the very first Invisible Man movie that they could continue using characters that he created in his novels if they wanted to do sequels and everything. And I don't know if that had been figured out prior to that or not, but 1932, I think or 36 was the first Invisible Man. So, that's pretty early to be cutting a deal with people and saying, sequel rights and stuff like that. Wow. So I thought that was really neat. And the other thing that I thought was really neat is I was like, geez, H.G. Wells was alive that late into the century? I didn't realize that he was born in like 1866 or something. Oh, really? And Time Machine was 1895. Oh. So he was not a young guy when he was cutting these deals.
Wow.
Saving for retirement.
Well, and he died. I don't know if you know anything about H.G. Wells.
Not really.
Not a lovely human being.
No, I did know that.
Lots of children from various people, even though he's married to his wife throughout the entire time.
Oh, dear.
But a brilliant man nonetheless.
Brilliant writer.
Dear friend.
Let's move beyond.
Dear friends.
Quickly.
Okay. This is a tough movie to find. It's out there. If you're willing to look hard enough.
You're industrious.
Yes. But and in 2005 it was released on some kind of Blu-ray set.
Oh,
probably one of those Universal ones that had like every single
all
the random stuff.
Right.
I think there's another one that was coming out in 2020.
Like I might have to grab it this time because this one was difficult and I knew I wanted to do it. So I had to resort to nefarious means.
Yeah, I just went to Crackle.
That's why we buy the independent filmmakers Blu-rays.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Why, yes, I have one too.
Yeah, what's your choice? I would love to know.
Boy, we got all kinds. This is another one where we span the eras of films.
Ooh.
Because mine was from 2016.
Wow.
A film called The Unseen.
So how you been? Still working at the mill?
What do you want, Darlene?
I want you to be her father. She hasn't seen you in 8 years. You didn't even say goodbye.
Hey, kiddo.
Why are you here?
I wanted to see you.
I better run. I've got friends waiting.
This place is supposed to be haunted.
Our daughter is missing. Amelia said she hasn't seen her since yesterday.
Is Eva here?
Why, is she your kid again?
She didn't come home last night.
Maybe she's dodging you, asshole.
It's my dog!
It's the same old theme since 1960.
Our daughter was here on your grounds with friends. She didn't come home.
If your daughter was here, she isn't now, Ruth.
Then I have to go.
You remember me, don't you, Bob? Look at yourself. your progression. You can't pass out there much longer.
Eva needs me.
They won't understand.
Have you seen her?
What are you?
I don't know. What do you know about young girls who go missing around here?
Hey, I don't care if she's sick.
What do you mean she's sick?
She's like you.
Do I have to come down there, Bud? To your house?
If you come near my family, what have you done? Where is she? Where's my daughter?
You see.
Which kind of seems appropriate for the film.
Right. Never even heard of it.
It does have, it's on Prime, so it's easy to see now. I think I may start doing this more often. It has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes with 8 reviews. So, you know, it's not terrible.
8 people love it.
Who also worked on the film.
That's critics.
Oh.
So.
8 critics love it.
And then for general audience, 240 ratings at 54%.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it was a festival release. It really didn't get any kind of release. I could find no real box office or budget numbers on it. Directed by Jeff Redknapp. A lot of short films. He's a makeup artist who's worked on a few things you might have heard of. 50 episodes of X-Files.
Nice.
34 episodes of Supernatural. Deadpool 2. Terminator Dark Fate. And is currently working on Ghostbusters Afterlife.
I was going to say, this guy's got to be a local to us filmmaker. He's working on all the X-Files, Supernatural, and Deadpool.
Vancouver.
I was going to say Canada.
Canada.
Them
Canadians.
Just pretend like that was a word.
He also wrote it. Stars Adam Young, who was in I, Frankenstein, and lots and lots and lots of TV.
Okay.
Probably also Vancouver-based.
Right.
Camille Sullivan, who's in The Disappearance, The Man in the High Castle, 7 episodes of that. Who Killed Jean Benet? Julia Sarah Stones, who's in The Killing, Vampire Dog, and like 160 some odd credits of stuff. And all of them, everybody I just listed off almost was in, including the director, was involved in many X-Files episodes and episodes of Arrow.
Oh.
Aha.
So he's got his team of folks he likes to work with, which I think worked out very well for him because the acting and everything like that in this film is really, really solid.
Wow.
The idea is it's a story of a man who years earlier, before the story started, abandoned his family, and his family does not know why. There's no indication of him having an affair or anything bad happening as far as the family goes. Ran away from the family, isolated himself in a small town where he works construction and does rough kind of work in the back of factories and things. But his daughter goes missing. For unknown reasons, and his wife calls him and says, it's been, I think, 8 years. You need to help me. It's time to be a dad. And he decides that, he's going to. But in that decision factor, you find out why he's abandoned. And unfortunately, it almost felt like it was Reanimator, where you're watching Reanimator and the first kind of effects thing is kind of really bad. Mm-hmm. Like the cat effect is just terrible, but the rest of the movie is filled with incredible effects. This one, he starts and he's got bandages on his hands, and he pulls the bandages off his hands, and the effect looks all right, but the hand is bizarrely large. So I'm like, oh, that's a little strange. But he's got gaps and holes throughout his hand. And you see later on, he's got gaps in his body and things like that where you can see into his body. So he's got parts of him that are invisible. So he decides to go help his daughter, and he revealed that he's slowly disappearing. Just different parts of him in pieces. He's always wearing a hat. He's always wearing a hood. He's also established as an ex-pro hockey player who is kind of known as being an enforcer. Like there's 2 or 3 mentions of this one video on YouTube or online where he's beating the crap out of some guy.
He was a goon?
Yep, exactly. But he didn't make any money in hockey, and as he's going to visit his daughter, he gets in a car wreck and needs help from a less than reliable folk, shall we say.
Oh, is this how he becomes invisible?
No. He's already been turning invisible. At the beginning of the movie, he's already started to be invisible.
I'm just hoping that he now has to go and play a hockey match to raise money where he's like invisible throughout.
Definitely not that kind of film. No.
It'd be so good though.
But he gets in a wreck trying to help his daughter, so he makes a deal with a guy that he's going to deliver something to somebody in that town and pick up some money and bring it back to the guy. They don't really say what it is, although I will give you a nice little trigger warning. There's a killing of a bear.
Oh.
Whoa.
And it's kind of like, oh, all right.
It's the Revenant.
So it's kind of like, well, he's not transporting drugs. What the hell is he bigging? That's the one weird question in the movie that never really gets addressed.
Baby bears? Like what?
But as he is...
I'm just trying to figure out why a bear would be mad. I've got all your baby bears. We're going to take them to the baby bear zoo. You'll never see your baby bears again.
I don't know where we've gone.
Sorry, I'm listening.
So there's a car. Let's go a little bit of a spoiler because it's only about a third of the way through the movie. As you find out, his daughter got lost in an insane asylum. Looking at an old abandoned asylum, her and her teenage buddies go, well, let's go check it out. As they're running away, when the security guard finds them, her friend grabs her hand and pulls her jacket up. And you see that her arm's partially invisible too.
What?
So that is, so it's like, oh, so this is a family thing. Well, and the dad finds out what asylum she disappeared in. He goes there because only part of it's abandoned. Part of it's still functioning. And he goes to the part that's still working and says, so this is where my grandfather killed himself. So I need your help why my daughter was at your same asylum. The lady working there goes, your grandfather didn't kill himself.
Oh.
Disappeared.
She's like, and I can help you with your problem as well. Holy shit.
Whoa.
So this is a really interesting film. And there's still a whole lot of the movie left to go after that point. A really unique take on invisibility because it's done as genetics. It has nothing to, there's no formulas and no anything going on. Eventually he starts fading more and more though. Like when he goes to, his daughter gets captured by some people who want to find out how they're turning invisible so they can use that. And he goes to rescue her and to scare the person at the front of the store, he takes off his hat and so you can see right. And these are good effects now. Whereas like most of his head is gone and you can see through parts of his face and it's just like, and he takes off more and he's patchworked all the way through. It's like, holy shit. So he's disappearing as the movie goes on. He's slowly fading away completely. And it ends with this strange invisible storyline going in through a very standard family drama where the mom and the dad have their problems and the daughter has no idea what's going on, but she then figures it's a smart film. It's really well acted. It's really interesting. It's very unique in the structure of an invisible character film. And I think it is highly underrated and really is one of those that I think you have a lot of fun seeing it. It is more, like I said, it's more of a drama than the other two we talked about. But there's definitely some violence and some fighting and some cool invisible weird shit goes on later on in the film when he does totally disappear at one point, and there's the classic invisible scenes, but there's not a lot of them.
Is it ever explained why? Or okay,
no, just genetics.
Oh man,
interesting.
I love this idea. This sounds great.
Yeah. Although I do wish there was hockey, like invisible hockey, but it's fine. I'll take it as it is. Maybe in the sequel.
You probably have worked for him.
That's kind of like my closing note overall in the film is that if you're looking for a movie about the cool things of things floating around and weird shit being done, this is really not going to be your film. That does happen, but it's not much. But it's a really well acted drama with horror, sci-fi, and pretty strong effects most of the time. The partial invisibility thing is really interesting.
I like this idea. It sounds different.
Yeah, it's fun. Go check it out. It's really good.
On Prime, right?
Yeah, Amazon Prime, The Unseen from 2016, because it's a little hard to find because a lot of films have The Unseen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies with that title.
Oh man, I know this is such a generic titling. Like even looking for the word invisible.
Yeah.
Man, it gets you quite a
Some weird
slew.
crap. This bug turns invisible in the woods.
Yeah.
No way.
Well, all right, guys. Good job. I like this episode a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that means whose turn is it next?
Well, next one's our 50th.
Oh, what are we doing?
So we need to figure out what we're doing for our 50th.
All right, maybe we're not going to tell you what we're doing because we don't know yet, but we're going to do something special for our 50th, I think.
Awesome.
So that'll happen next week. Until then, thank you guys so much for all the reviewing, the sharing, everything you guys are doing, the lovely messages we've been getting. We ended up on a couple of people's favorite podcast of the year lists and stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool.
Thanks, Ron.
Aw.
So I guess we wrap it up here, and we'll let you know when we know what's going on next week.
There you go.
Hey.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Our show is recorded somewhere high above Naval Station Everett at the nexus of all realities and is engineered and produced by Eric Margaret. Our theme music is Strange Aeons Part 1 by the band Nightshade and is used with permission. Find Strange Aeons Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and wherever fine podcasts are found.